Oh man, so great.
Okay, so speaking of,
I love that.
these sweaters are for purchase if you go to N2 Party on Instagram, or just reach out to me. This is a fundraiser for a Facebook group called End the Two Party System. So this is like a secondary fundraiser. Obviously, I'm not going to try and take away anything from, this is just an ugly sweater thing.
It go
But
it, it goes right along with knife rights. It's perfect. The
well,
perfect
yes, it
combo.
does.
You know,
Absolutely. So, um,
that's what this thing's all about.
okay. Really quickly, what I'm going to do is I brought on my guest Tommy here, who is my friend from high school, and I thought that the best thing would be to sort of share our story in terms of how we got somewhere. I think that would be my biggest contribution to this community, because as far as anything I might have to contribute, the things anything I have to contribute to Knives would be if you have any questions on pronunciation. So, for example, let me correct you, everybody. It's not Begleiter, it's Begleiter. So, like a glide, you combine the Begleiter together. So, things like that. Um, and anyway, but that's not the most important thing. I don't know what's going on with Mary's camera right here. But otherwise,
Não, não
kind of
liga
where
para
we're
mim,
coming
não.
from. Então, você vai cantar ou o quê?
Não, eu cantar? Só no fim da live que eu vou cantar. Como é que ele se chama, o teu amigo?
Okay, that doesn't work. Not that doesn't either. That's better. Sorry, I should have experimented with these settings before. Okay, so kind of where I'm coming from is, okay, so with knife rights, just so you know, for example, the situation in California, first of all, I want people to be clear. In California, they make no distinction whatsoever on daggers. So double-edged knives are not even, the only way they're mentioned is dirks and daggers are merely defined as fixed blades. Okay, that's it. So I need anyone who's got some influence, please let these retailers know there is no prohibition against double-edged blades in California. They don't even have a specific designation. And contrary to popular belief, we actually have extremely liberal knife laws. Now, my opposition to these kinds of laws is that it's already a crime to commit a crime with a knife or any other weapon. We don't need to additionally penalize for simply being in possession of something. We all know already that the majority of all knife crimes are carried out by cheap kitchen knives from Walmart. So I'm not going to rehash everything that's already been said during the 24 hours. However, where I'm coming from is the things I cover in my channel are knives, preparedness, disaster preparedness, etc. Prepping for, building a society beyond the nation state, right? So how do we define the nation state? A nation state is defined by the nation state reserves all legitimate violence is held in monopoly by the state itself, which is why, vigilantism and all, et cetera, which is why self-defense is so carefully prescribed and proscribed by the law. Okay. So where I'm coming from is that my contribution to this community, I hope, is by bringing on my guest here, Tommy, who's my friend from childhood, and to show you a kind of a different path that's been taken, right? So let me introduce you to a few concepts. Firstly is Plato's allegory of a cave, right? So you guys just look it up if you aren't familiar with it. It's the idea that these slaves are chained up. They only see these shadows on the wall. One of them breaks free, sees that it's just a puppet show behind him, and then he even leaves the cave altogether, gets blinded by the light of the sun. Then he comes back and tries to tell the other slaves that are still chained up, hey, there's this bright, fiery ball out in the middle of the sky, people think he's crazy, right? So, but as you can understand, once we leave a certain space, right, and then receive a broader knowledge, a larger view, a more intricate understanding of how things are structured, right? Then it's difficult to go back to watching the shadow puppets on the wall and see any kind of significance to it, right? So what I'm concerned about in our knife community and what I'm hoping I could provide as a service, right? My biggest contribution I think that I could provide is what pieces of the puzzle, if you truly want to be prepared, right? If you want to truly consider yourself tactically viable, right? You need to have what? At the very least, the best information available. Have you been exposed to a lot of this stuff, or have you in fact been sequestered and isolated and ghettoized into this little tiny intellectual bubble where you're not exposed to the range and depth of human thought over the past several centuries, right? So a few basic concepts I want to introduce. In this discussion, I want to consider a few things to be the very most important tools that we have available to us that you might not have considered before as being very important. So the number one biggest tool I would say is anxiety, right? Being able to sit with anxiety, I think, is going to be one of the most important tools that we have for us to help us to change and reflect, grow, evolve, right? Expand. I genuinely believe that in our society, in our modern society, we have become so weak, so pathetic, so cowardly, right? That we can't even sit for a moment with a little bit of anxiety, right? So therefore, we have to rid ourselves of complexity, contradiction, paradox, right? That everything has to be a simple pat answer, yes or no. Tell me what to think. Give me the party line, right? So this goes into the two different imaginations of shame that we've had, right? So in the West, we have this kind of private shame. In the East, there's this concept of public shame, like saving face, right? So Mencius, student of Confucius, all that, he said, how can you know how to do what's right? How to differentiate between right and wrong if you don't know any public shame. In other words, we go out in society. Everyone knows, yeah, there's that fucking piece of shit over there. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to curse this early in the broadcast. Hopefully the algorithm won't nail me too soon. But, you've got this scandalous person over here who acts outrageously, selfishly, greedily. And he just goes on. And if anything, he's proud about it. So what I want to suggest is that in the context of this conversation, if we truly want to engage in an honest and sincere dialogue, right, where you're willing to hear that which has been kept from you very carefully through a very long historical process, through a very carefully structured sets of institutions in education, in established religion, et cetera, right? So what are some of the tools that we have to liberate our minds? Humility, to be able to say, to enter into that anxiety and say, maybe I've been wrong. Maybe I need to reflect. Honesty, being totally honest with yourself. Maybe not anybody else, but at least be honest with yourself. Sincerity, open-mindedness, a willingness to be a total absolute commitment to being to being unabashedly moral and ethical. If you want to just be like, oh, fuck me, fuck this, fuck that, fuck everybody else, okay, fine. You don't need to participate in this dialogue. Go on your merry way. That's fine. We're not here to engage with you. But if you're coming to the table and you want to be able to say, hey, I've got a lot of questions. I think that I've been bamboozled. I want a more satisfying answer to the deeper questions in life. Then that's what I'm hoping that we can provide with for you here. Obviously I have a whole lot more, but I think essentially what I want to get at is how so many of us, and I'm including so both Tom and I, in our upbringing, how much we had been hijacked by the powers that be to their own benefit to work against our own self-interest. How is it that we came to that point? Now, he and I, in different ways, have done that homework, right? We've done that analysis. We have gained that perspective of how that point in history has been reached, right? So, I mean, I can go on and on, but I kind of want to let Tommy speak. So, is that a little too much, or did you want to give us a little bit of background on yourself? And Tom's. Let me introduce Tom. He's a published author. I've put his book title in the description, so hopefully that came out. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time with the chat. I only have an hour, sadly, so I unfortunately will probably not be able to engage with the chat at this point. I will review it later. If and Tom has generously agreed to return to do kind of a follow-up if folks are truly intrigued by this. And this is, just so you know, this is something that I rarely touch upon on my channel. 99% of my channel is just knives, right? We've ended up getting sidetracked on like UFOs, the warp drives that the U.S. Navy has a patent on, ghosts. We've gone into some bizarre stuff, and I'm glad to return to that too, as well. But and I also agree that primarily, I think it's appropriate that we don't touch politics in knife chats, because I personally as well don't want to hear. I want to hear about knives. Unfortunately, for me, like I said, I can tell you that officially, the shark lock is the best thing to happen to knives since the Buck 110. And I stand by that. That's what my channel stands for. The shark lock is the greatest invention to hit knives in 60, 70 years. Okay. That's about as much as novel stuff as you're going to get from me. But otherwise, this is hopefully my contribution, and, participate if you'd like. Otherwise, I understand. And I know that maybe, I'm expecting to get a lot of heat for this, a lot of backlash. I kind of feel like I'm already a pariah anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. But I'll hand it over to you, Tommy, if you're okay, and if you want to share a little bit about your story or our story, however you want to begin.
Good morning, Charles. Good morning, YouTube Nation. I'm tuning in from Detroit, Michigan. This is land that was tended by the Anishinaabe people for thousands of years before 1701. And unfortunately, this is a state where just a few weeks ago, the governor, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democratic governor, vetoed the bipartisan knife rights bill here in the state. So I haven't been out here forever. My wife, Lindsay, and I moved out here to Detroit in 2014. Like Charles said, we grew up together in Southern California and went to high school together. And so it's great to be on this platform with y'all, and to just reconnect with Charles anytime I can is a huge blessing for me. I'm coming at this thing like front and center. I'm coming at this thing from a Christian worldview. I've been committed to Christian faith for 40 years. I would say that I'm committed to the biblical tradition. This morning I read the text from Psalms that says, rescue me, O God, from those who are cunning and deceitful. I think it's a perfect text for what Charles is talking about here, and it goes to my own story. Until I was about 30, and I'll just take it back to when I was like early 2000s. I was a high school teacher and coach and athletic director at the large public high school that Charles and I went to. I was also the associate pastor at an evangelical church in Orange County, California. I was not married. I was working 80 hours a week, working ministry, working for the school, and I had this moment. I mean, one of the moments that I go back to is I woke up on a Saturday morning to drive down to the beach, to just sit on the shore and kind of gather my thoughts and write. And when I was walking out to the car, I met this guy who was speaking in broken English, and he had missed his bus to work. And so I gave him a ride to work. We were kind of going in the same direction. And as we were having this conversation, I asked him, where are you from? And he told me he was from Honduras. And we talked a little bit more. He had recently come to the States, and I said, "Hey, how'd you get from Honduras to here?" And he said he walked. So this guy tells me this story that he walked 3,000 miles to get to the U.S. border, and it started to get me thinking about like why would he come here? As it turns out, that as I dug further and further and further, it was U.S. policies that created a terrible situation for him in Honduras. It's U.S. policies that create a terrible situation for a lot of folks all over the world, especially in Central America. It's U.S. policies, U.S. economic and military policies that ultimately lead people to leave their countries because they're looking for work. These are U.S. policies backed by wealthy and powerful people here in the United States. We would say the top 0.1% of people who have money. And that just kind of like started me off on this journey where I just started digging. I started having conversations with students in my own classroom, students who are undocumented, students who are queer, students who are Black, students who are immigrants from all over the world, and it just really opened up my heart and my head to understanding these new ways. And ultimately what I realized, what Charles is talking about, Plato in the cave, is that I was in the cave. I was in the cave looking at shadows, and I wasn't confronted with real life. And it's been a huge process for me in the last 20 years of kind of unlearning all of the old scripts in my head. I was one who was fine telling racist jokes. I was fully committed to one political party, the Republican Party. I've come to a point where today I'm not committed to either political party, but see it as my own task to find truth, to discover what reality really is. And as folks on this platform know, there's a lot of bullshit to cut through. I don't know if I can say bullshit this early in the broadcast, but we're gonna keep it going. The algorithm's not gonna cut us off, right? So yeah, I mean those would be early kind of comments from me and my own journey of coming to truth, of cutting through the cunning and the deception that continues to just ramp up at a massive level in our society. And again, today, what I would say is that I followed Jesus out of evangelical Christianity. Today, I'm a pastor, a kind of a free agent pastor outside of the institutional church, interacting with folks all over North America who have similar stories to me and Charles, who grew up in the evangelical church and ate it up, just believed in all of it, but over time have become jaded and have like digested all of this really toxic substance, all this toxic energy, and are trying to come out the other side, and are finding ourselves in our own spiritual wilderness. I spend a lot of time here in Detroit at serving at soup kitchens, at food pantries, connecting with folks who are getting their water shut off by the city. These are folks who cannot afford, who don't even have an income, who can't find a job, who can barely afford the home that they're living in. Today in Detroit, there are tens of thousands of residents still who have had their water shut off, and they can't afford to turn it back on. The water bills out here are the highest, some of the highest in the nation. And to me, this is happening everywhere. Um, these are policies enacted by wealthy and powerful people, and then on top of that, justified by bullshit narratives around they don't work hard enough, they're lazy, they're criminal. Well, they pay their cell phone bills, but they don't pay their water bills. Like all of this is just bullshit created by wealthy and powerful people who are absolutely obsessed with keeping the rest of the population in the cave, believing in the shadows and not what's really happening on the ground. So yeah, I mean, I'll stop there, and Charles and I, we can have a little bit more of a conversation. I don't know what comes up, or if there's anything coming up in the chat right now, or what sort of direction we might want to go with this, because there's a lot of different directions we could go. But I'll stop. I'll stop with that. And ultimately, it led me to write this book that I had published 3 years ago, where I tell my story, my whole story about like what led me to what I call decolonize evangelical Christianity, and and again the kind of fodder and deep spiritual substance that are in these ancient texts in the Bible, reading about the life of Jesus in the Gospels, all of this, all of these stories, the kind of virtue, the kind of passion that is on all of these pages in the Bible, the compassion, the love, the agape love, the justice, the humility, the gentleness, the reverence for all of life, on every page. Like that's not what I experienced ultimately in the evangelical church. And it's those things, the truth, right? The unadulterated truth, being committed to facts, and letting those guide my life, that I'm trying to build my life on.
Are you frozen? I think, Tommy, are you frozen? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Because my internet is super shitty.
Yeah.
Are you
No,
there?
no, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, my internet is super shitty. It's just Hollywood. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you've been on the whole time, so I'm
Okay,
I'm
you can
connected.
continue. Go go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I stopped Charles there. I don't know like what direction you might want to go with this.
Sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, I stopped there. I don't know what direction you might want to go with this
Oh
conversation.
yeah. Did you want to talk a little bit about your book? Did you already share that a little?
Yeah, I gave just a little bit of a, synopsis. of it. A lot of my own story is connected to. I mean, ultimately, I'll say this too. A few years after I, had some of these initial experiences, having these conversations with folks. By the way, going on short-term evangelical mission trips to places like Nairobi, Kenya, and Nigeria and Mexico, and being in these slums, right? The Kibera slum in Nairobi has more than 1 million people, some of the poorest places in the world, and walking around and thinking in my head, okay, what my evangelical faith tells me is that if you don't invite Jesus into your heart to be your personal Lord and Savior, you're going to hell when you die. So you're trying to tell me that these folks, many of them who are Muslim, many of them who are not Christian, they're going to live this life on this planet, and then they're going to go to hell when they die. It's those kinds of experiences that I was having, that was really just kind of like making me very jaded with my faith, right? So all of these places that I get to visit and see, and then on top of that, by the way, my work as an administrator at the high school, as I talk to parents of student athletes, as I talk to parents in my classroom, the biggest assholes that I dealt with were evangelical Christians. They were the people who,
Even though you were one.
even though I was one, these are people that went to the same church as me. So it's disorienting me. I'm having these experiences with these people who are in my church, and contrasting them with people all over the world, students in my classroom, people that I'm meeting, and I'm saying to myself, this isn't right. This isn't adding up. I'm not talking about a few interactions with a few Christians. I'm talking about over and over and over again, the kind of entitlement, the kind of defensiveness, the sensitivity, and the obliviousness, the ignorance, that I'm experiencing with people back in 2002, 2003, 2004. This is when it's all really starting for me. And I'll say
at that
this.
time we were invading other countries on the behest of a small handful of mega corporations.
That's right.
I mean, that's undisputed.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's not a conspiracy theory.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Easy to look up. And we have a defense secretary at that time who's quoting the Bible to justify all of that.
Okay, and let me remind people the role of this defense secretary. He didn't pop up out of anywhere, right? So when we look at the conservative legacy, okay, actual people making actual decisions and policy decisions. Go ahead, Google October surprise. This is how Reagan came into power. Okay, Reagan won only because of the Iran-Contra crisis, right? Who was the person in charge of getting those helicopters? Oh, we see that same name again. Why did he delay the mission to go rescue them for as many hours as he did? Because he needed to switch out the desert helicopters for jungle ones so that he could make sure they crash in the middle of the desert. And what did we get a result of that? JSOC. Oh, what's JSOC doing now? JSOC is the one that's assassinating people in their sleep. By definition, a war crime. Someone says on a radio, death to America. They hit him with a drone. They hit him with JSOC. And then when they have a funeral for them and his family members, they hit the funeral. That's what the military calls a double tap. Okay? You know who else does that? Gangsters in South Central. So when we're trying to understand U.S. foreign policy, it's important to understand how criminals work. This was a liberal policy established by the Dulles brothers under Kennedy. It was what he called the lunatic policy. He said, these are internal documents. Okay, this is not a conspiracy theory. They would say, on occasion, you sometimes just have to randomly invade some innocent country, as he said, so that the others will fall in line. And this is what he called establishing credibility.
Wow.
Establishing credibility. That's something that a mob boss understands. Just go beat up some random guy down the street so that everyone else in the neighborhood knows, don't fuck with this guy. He's fucking he's a psychotic motherfucker. Right? So, you know, when it seems like, oh, you guys are anti-military, okay? You guys are anti-police. We need to leave the cave. Don't just look at the shadows on the wall.
Right.
Leave the cave. Look at the bright light of the sun. Understand that this world is extremely complex, wrought with contradiction, right? And full of hypocrisy, right? You cannot. So much of our fear, that's why I'm saying this anxiety is important. Why? Because sometimes we have to face the fact that, well, maybe everything I was taught was utterly wrong, and that it actually goes against the very principles I hold dear. Those things preached to me that I thought was what we were about as a society. What if everything done in that name is exactly what I find horrific, reprehensible, and detestable? Right? I wrote in the chat, you were talking about that guy from Honduras. Why are you coming here? Because we were there, right? So when we had these caravans of buses coming up from Central America, do you know about the proxy war? 155,000 indigenous people were slaughtered in El Salvador with U.S. weapons. Okay? Let's talk about the October surprise, Donald Rumsfeld. Let's talk about Reagan coming in office. Let's talk about Iran-Contra, where we had the Israelis selling arms to the Contras, who were hired by the mafia. The mafia was hired by the CIA to bring guns to the Contras, who were committing war crimes from Honduras into El Salvador, exterminating indigenous people, right? Filling those countries with guns, right? And then when the mafia was coming back, they said, we're not going to come back empty-handed. Let us fill our cargo planes with the most pound-for-pound valuable product, which was cocaine. This is a part of the historical record. Look up, what's the reporter's name that ended up committing suicide in the early 2000s? He went to Berkeley. I'm blanking on it right now because I'm all
that dude.
But he wrote a series of articles which were then denied by the LA Times. It's a joke, but he dug up court records in San Diego talking about the CIA drug trade, right? And they were filtering it to the gangs. Freeway Ricky Ross, look that up. Black people in South Central do not have boats and planes. This crack epidemic was specifically designed. Let's go back to the war on drugs. The war on drugs was first declared under what? Reagan? No, under Nixon. There was what they called the prison bed crisis. What was the prison bed crisis? Crime was plummeting. They were going to be forced to close prisons all across the country. And as a result, Nixon declared the war on drugs. They did the calculations, and they realized that they had to arrest 115% of the criminals in poor black neighborhoods. Okay, these are internal documents liberated by those guys over in they raided some HUD housing and urban development documents in the 60s and released these documents, right? Where they needed to over police specific neighborhoods to fill these prison beds to prevent them from being shuttered, right? So when we're talking about knife rights and my opposition to nailing somebody with 0.2 inches too long of a knife blade, okay, that's not the guy in Beverly Hills, okay, it's the guy in South Central, okay. It can be used as a weapon by the state to oppress those communities that were specifically targeted. You know, why did we go through all this education, never learn about redlining and how the ghettos were created in the first place, and how white flight and white, you know. Anyway, did you want to cut in and cut me off a little bit, because I'm gonna go on a rant, and I want to give you a little bit more airtime.
Yeah, these rants are spirit led, Charles. But I'll say this, just kind of piggybacking on what you're talking about. Again, personal testimony. Let me testify that I talk to guys early and often in the soup kitchen line, black men who have lived in Detroit their entire lives, except when they were taken away to prison, who have done far less than I ever have, and have spent serious time in prison, right? For possessing, you know, small amounts of marijuana, for possessing some sort of weapon, so on and so forth. This is precisely, and this is what I've been confronted with consistently. You know, when I look back, I played college basketball. Half my team was black. You know, one of our starting center missed the last 10 games because he was taken away to jail. You know, I mean, he didn't do anything that warranted that. And again, less than stuff that I've done in my life. This is the fact. And if I can take it back to you know, a little bit earlier, what Charles was talking about. Again, my own personal experience. When I talk to friends of mine from way back, friends that we went to church together back when we were teenagers, friends that we went to evangelical organizations at college, friends that I served with in ministry in my 20s. Many of them lament that I've changed. What happened, Tommy? You became liberal. You've gone off the deep end. And my response to my friends consistently is, I haven't changed. I'm still committed to the biblical tradition that I've been committed to for 40 years, to truth, to humility, to servant leadership, to the deep compassion of Jesus and the Good Samaritan, and the running father, and the prodigal son story, and on and on and on. I mean, these are the things I believe in. These are the things that are all over the biblical text. I just see myself as deepening into that tradition, and ultimately, the things of this world that I've learned have made me make decisions based on that. I'm not going to just continue to put up with the kind of deception, the kind of cunning, the kind of bullshit that is continued to be signed off on, both in the church and in the realm of politics and corporations and so on and so forth. Yeah, I don't back from any more rants, Charles. I don't know if that, you know, sparks anything. What knife is that right there?
That's the Cold Steel Chris. This is the limited edition Lynn Thompson sign. This is the last of a breed. This guy sold out to a major corporation, and everyone freaked out. And this is the thing, you know, when we talk about, people instinctively knew when Lynn Thomas sold Cold Steel to a big mega corporation, instinctively everyone threw a hissy. I mean, people's heads exploded. I'll tell you, including mine. Immediately, they knew right away they're gonna squeeze blood out of a rock, right? They're gonna have to cut corners somewhere. The first thing they did was cut everybody's job out here in Ventura. Cold Steel had a shitload of employees, and all of them were thrown out in the parking lot, right? So that's how they squeeze profit out of these companies, right? Now, hopefully, they haven't changed quality. Thus far, it seems as though they're sticking with the same manufacturer in Taiwan. The quality still seems to be there. I have a few of their new generation knives with their new logo, but these are still the originals, right?
Wow.
Incredible action,
how long's that blade?
incredible quality, incredible heat treat. Yeah, how do you like that, huh?
How long is that blade?
These are all, flickable. That's the Vaquero, right? These are some of my favorite knives here. The Luzon. This is based on a Filipino knife, but somehow we inherently knew that the entire community freaked out. Again, left and right, conservative, liberal, what you name it, freaked out. That we inherently knew these mega corporations are a bad problem. The problem is with capitalism itself. Now, people freak out, their heads explode. Ooh, what are you, a communist? Right? First of all, I am not, or have never been a communist. Okay, that's a parody on the MacArthur hearings, but the McCarthy hearings, excuse me. And I am not. I am a radical, and I am an anti-capitalist. It's like, well, anti-capitalist. Let me make a distinction here. Buy low, sell high. That's not capitalism. That's just economics. Okay, you run a small business, you make a product, you sell that product. That's economy. That's economics. Capitalism is a very specific academic concept. Let's go back to Adam Smith, and then after him, Marx. Those are the two philosophers who best described capitalism. Adam Smith talked about the invisible hand. Here is one of the greatest tricks ever concocted, one of the biggest hoaxes, right up to the University of Chicago, the Holy Temple of Capitalism. They recently published the 400th anniversary or 300th anniversary of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. You look at their index, right? You look up invisible hand, and they noticeably leave it out. In today's discourse, they say, oh, don't worry, these free market fundamentalists, they'll say, oh, don't worry, the invisible hand of capitalism will fix it. The market will fix it. It's the market fetishization. That's what we call free market fundamentalism. And it's important to understand that it is a religious ideology. Why? Because in the face of incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, they still believe that somehow markets fix things. Now, what is the actual evidence? Adam Smith said, he posed a question. Adam Smith said, wait, what happens if these capitalists realize I can get cheaper Belgian workers to work in my factories in England, in the north of England? Why wouldn't I just do that? Why wouldn't I just seek cheaper labor? Adam Smith said, well, he said, but they're Englishmen first, capitalists second. They wouldn't do such a thing. The invisible hand of capitalism will prevent that from happening. In other words, he suggested that somehow the invisible hand of capitalism will prevent what we call today capital flight, right? Now, we know that that's just, it's ludicrous, right? Let me tell you why capitalism is an issue. Capitalism requires three things: access to natural resources, open markets, and cheap labor. All three of them require incredibly well-organized institutional state violence to repress workers from coming together, taking over the means of production, from foreign markets from protecting themselves from a flood of cheap imports, right? And access to their natural resources. Right. You want to look at your cell phone, look at the coltan market. Who here knows about the mining of coltan and how many slaves in Africa are murdered in the mining of coltan? Chocolate. Do you know how many people die because of chocolate? Diamonds. Gold. Did you know that there's a whole international cabal controlling gold in the Philippines? Yeah. The rabbit hole goes deep. You've been bamboozled. Okay? You have been arguing about shadows on the wall and which ones are your favorite, and you've been picking sides on a shadow of an elephant and a shadow of a donkey. Yeah. but you're the real ass. You're being fooled.
Right.
The information is out there. It's been out there since before we were born. If you want to know, there are centuries of human thought that explain all of this clearly. All of those internal documents have been released and analyzed for you to consume in nice, tiny little books.
Yeah.
If you want to know, you can get started. I made a list of resources that you can pursue. But anyway, I'm about to go on another rant. So
the world needs more of it. The world needs more
where
of
are
it.
we on time? 45 minutes, 50.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Sorry, go ahead.
And that's the thing, you know, Charles, you hit on that point where people start to say, oh, well, you're not a capitalist. That means you're a Marxist, you're a communist, you're a socialist, you're a fill in the blank. Anytime folks ever say that in a simplified way, they're just saying, get your ass back into that cave. Go back into the cave. Go back into the cave. Be a complete dumbass for the rest of your life and just go along with how this world operates. And it's like, again, from a Christian point of view for me, set in your hearts, set apart Christ as Lord. Now that means that Caesar is not Lord. That means that the market is not Lord, right? That means the Republican Party is not Lord. That means that my white skin is not Lord, right? I mean, these things all need to be deconstructed and dismantled in my life and in this world because they are destructive forces. They are forces that keep us in the cave. They are forces that keep us blind to what is happening in our world, right? And again, it's one of the things I've learned from Charles in our conversations, especially over the last 15 years, is that really you dig up all of this, right? You dig up chocolate, you dig up gold, you dig up diamonds, you dig up you know, my craft beer that I love. There are atrocities that are involved, and it is most people that I know that have a semblance of some sort of privilege. They don't want to know anymore. They just want to keep living their life. They want to have some sort of comfort with the shadows on the wall in the cave. And again, it's what continues to having this conversation with Charles yesterday. When we're going to be in a more and more into a survival type of situation, the deception and the cunning, it will come down to knowing, being able to identify that, or we're going to be dead. It's just that plain and simple. We cannot continue to live like dumbasses and allow for the wealthy, the powerful, the militarized to continue to have their way with us. And again, like we've been talking about, both major political parties. You just look into it a little bit, and it's got a huge history, and it continues today. Show us that Christmas sweater, Charles.
Yeah, that's the Christmas sweater for sale, very limited in quantity. I just want to address really quickly, Shane. In fact, you were absolutely right. It's super disjointed. I'm sure it's confusing as hell. I'm not trying to be particularly coherent. I'm trying to be extremely cogent. And that can't be done in 55 minutes because it's a huge, complex web, interconnected, and there is a through narrative. But we can't even begin to scratch the surface here. My goal here with Tommy today was not to draw a complete, even a sort of complete picture. We just want to poke a couple of pinholes that you can peer through some light, right? maybe scrape to take the allegory of the cave, scrape away some of the dirt and the rubble, so that some of the true light of the sun can start to shine down into the dark cave. I realize it's nearly impossible, which is why I'm inviting folks who care. If you want to engage in dialogue, I'm going to do separate things apart from the knives, because this is a knife channel. I cover knives. I talk about knives. That's my passion. I want to get rid of any and all possession laws. Are just silly. They just don't make any sense. And I can go into that as well. But I want to invite people who feel like people can often deeply sense inside when they've been tricked, when they've been fooled. Something doesn't sit right somewhere deep in that instinctual gut self, right? That you think, this isn't it, right? So often that fear of anxiety, that wish to not be uncomfortable drives us to want certainty. Certainty is comforting, right? And typically we as tribal humans seek that certainty, and we often seek that certainty in confidence. Let me introduce to you another thing that you can Google, the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'll type that in here real quick. But look up the Dunning-Kruger effect. Sadly, society faces this dilemma because sociologists have demonstrated that people who are less competent always overestimate their ability and intelligence, and people who are highly competent invariably underestimate their competence and intelligence. So people who are less able step to the front with tremendous confidence. People who do know a lot start to realize, once again, Plato mentioned this, once you know a lot, you realize more and more how much you don't know, right? And they step back like, I'm not sure. There's this. And on the other hand, I had a professor in grad school that he was so fantastic. He was this African guy. And he would say, on the other hand, he would do that about 15 times. It was genius. I mean, he would just take that argument and complexify and complexify and complexify. It was amazing. He was so well read. Lastly, we are running out of time. I'm going to have to do this knife giveaway really quickly.
Yeah.
We'll just do the numbers thing as soon as possible. But what I was going to say is I have, a whole list of resources to begin with. Like, I just want to introduce this. This is, again, side, it's parallel. I don't want to seem like I'm trying to hijack this for some agenda, because I don't have that agenda. If we only lived in basically like a Western European social democracy, I wouldn't be saying much. I would just go on about my hobbies and my passions. I'm a filmmaker. I I have a lot of other interests besides politics. I only get involved in this kind of stuff because it's so relevant, and because we're so behind the curve, and because we cook the earth. There's another thing. So let's do the numbers game as soon as possible. I'm going to do it the way other people do, and let's get that out of the way. Let me grab a pen. I'm sorry, I'm grossly underprepared for this. I've never, done a giveaway. Javon has graciously donated a QSP Leopard in OD Green micarta. So it's a fantastic knife. If you guys don't have QSP, every QSP knife I've gotten is great. Also, check out QSP fixed blades. Are really stepping it up. The Workaholic, forget about it. I love that. It's one of my favorite knives. Okay, so I don't know how many people are in the chat, so let's make the range big. Some from 500 to 700. If you guys want to put in your guess, so let me write it here. So let me tear this off real quick. So there's the range. Do you see it? is that reading the right way from 500 to 700? And I'm going to write it right here. So go ahead and start guessing if you would like. Is it a pick or okay? Oh crap. Okay. I don't know how to. Okay. Who's on next? Goodness. If somebody could post who's next, I do know, but I'm blanking right now because I have really bad ADD, and so I'm just trying to run this numbers thing. So let's give it 1 more minute. Bees is next. That's correct. That's right. Bees Blades is next. And he was excited about the prospect of having audience members whose brains were going to be exploded because I did suggest that I was going to explode some brains. So I realize people and again, I do apologize if it seems as though I was trying to run my own agenda or seeming like I may wanted to have hijacked this thing. You guys have all heard and you'll continue to hear how to donate to knife rights, how to get rid of these ridiculous laws. They're preposterous. They're oppressive. They're telltale signs of an oppressive state. I am against nation states. I'm against imaginary boundaries. So there's still some numbers coming in, so I won't cut it off until the last minute. We have about 60 seconds left, or about 2 minutes left, I think. About 60 seconds left. I saw one more come in. Are there any more coming in? Okay, so I think we are just about out of time. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to call it at this point, and I apologize if people. I'm gonna then okay. Yeah, Jan, I appreciate your comments. I could tell you were getting what we were trying to get at. I wasn't trying to offend anyone or belittle anybody, but Tommy and I, for a long time now, have been wanting to create a platform for people who, like us, were raised in a cave like intellectual and mental and spiritual slaves. And we broke free from the chains through much effort and lots of blood. Okay. We paid the price constantly. I mean, rejected by friends, family, loved ones, by our community, made to pay for our intellectual rigor, which they saw as rebellion. And we want to be support for other people who, with a sincere heart and genuine conviction, also want to emerge from that cave, want to throw off the bondage of moral and ethical capitulation, okay, and cowardice, okay, and want to step up like true warriors who want to say, hey, I'm going to lose this fucking battle. I'm going to join this war that's already been lost, but I'm going to fight to the fucking death for what's right. And I'm going to do it the right thing for the right fucking reasons. Fuck you. You can't touch me. Okay? I'm already past death. I've seen the true light of the sun. I'm not going back in the fucking cave. Okay, so that's the winning number. I think I fooled several of you. I think I might have made it too obvious because people who know my channel know that I always choose a certain number. And so the person who has won can reach out to me at Hollywood Tactical on Instagram. I'm going to get you over to Javon. And Javon, he's here, a Knife Addict Life, is going to send you the QSP Leopard in OD Green micarta. I think I've gone over by a minute, and I apologize to Bees Blades. So, okay, so we have a winner. Okay, I'm sorry to my regular people. I think I was a little bit too obvious and a little bit tricky. I thought I was going to be clever, and I think I was a little bit too obvious. I'm new to this goth thing. Oh, please, my final last word. Fuck YouTube, okay? Because YouTube is an evil corporation. They're owned by Google, okay? You guys, when Metal Complex got demonetized twice, okay? When all of your favorite channels are being monetized for arbitrary reasons without any due process, that's because corporations are private tyrannies. if you believe in democracy, we have to democratize the economy. Martin Luther King was very clear about this. Okay, you cannot have political, social liberty if you do not have economic liberation. Okay, YouTube does not decide these things unilaterally. We, the content creators, have to take over YouTube. Go to George Sprave's channel and join FairTube. It's called FairTube. It's George Sprave. He's Austrian or German. I think he's German. And FairTube is now an official union in Germany. So now they have official branches. I'm part of the US branch of FairTube. You guys, spread the word. Tell Metal Complex. Tell all these other channels that keep getting demonetized for weapons, okay? YouTube is making unilateral decisions. There's no due process. You get a ding, and then you're fucked, and then they're destroying people's lives. The adpocalypse that made us turn to Patreon and getting specifically funded by a company, fuck YouTube, okay? So we as the people have to get together and get behind FairTube. So FairTube is based on PeerTube. Okay, I didn't know that. I don't know what PeerTube is. Sorry. I'm sorry I went over to Beast Blades. Everyone head over to Beast Blades. Thanks, Tommy. Tommy's generously agreed to join us again when he gets the chance, or we could do a follow-up if you want. So sorry, I'm just I'm metal as hell. Yeah, I'm mad as hell, and whatever that line. Okay, thanks, Tommy, and I appreciate you coming out.
So good to
thanks
be with
everyone for joining us, and
hey, let's do happy hour. Everybody, come join us. Let's keep this conversation going.
Okay.
Hey, love y'all.
Thanks a lot.